damaged stem, right? Someone ran into that with the skid steer. And you want to repair that right there, right? Or if that's starting to decay, well, we can bridge that, right? We showed that on the slides. So I did one here, and I just made two. You'd make a third one right there. But the way I went about it, you cut scions that are slightly larger than the place you need to bridge. Now I made a score at the top and the bottom of the callus I'm trying to overlap. If this were really bad, you might go further into live tissue. You want softer bark, stuff that's not decayed already to graft into. And so I make that slit down into the hardwood. You can feel it when you hit hardwood. And then I made my notches as wide as my scion. So that's going to depend on what size of scion you use. Of course, this is a small little practice area, so we're using these little, we can use little ones so that we can do another one, do multiple on these blocks. But you know, out on a real tree, if a skid steer came by and hit this, you'd see a big notch out of it. And you can use scions that just stretch that whole distance. And the idea is that we're allowing the tree to bypass that by grafting into a new section of wood here and a new section of wood there, and all those nutrients can still flow back and forth and basically cover up this wound once they grow up. Yeah, so this is a bridge graft. And then the scion, you'll make a long angular cut on one side and on the other side of the same, well, on both ends, same side of the scion. And then flip it over and make shorter cuts, about half the distance of the first cut. And that's going to be the back side, the side you face outward. The longer surface area is going to be placed up against the inside of the tree. And so you just slide that underneath the bark like that. And they should be somewhat flexible. And then it should stab into each of your notches underneath the bark. You'll leave a little flap of bark. Sometimes it might break because this is thicker wood, right? So it might break on you. That's all right as long as you still have some sort of flap to put over it. Larger scions are then nailed in each location. These little ones, you could maybe get a staple gun and hit them, or if this is a small diameter trunk, you could just wrap the whole thing in string, okay, to hold those in place. The other type of graft that we haven't gone over yet is inarching, and you would do this to a tree that perhaps doesn't have a stable root system. Again, it's a repair kind of graft. It's something that you only do. You're not doing it to try to grow a new tree or a new variety. You're doing it to try to repair one that's maybe not quite as stable as it could be. And so what you do with inarching is you're trying to establish a new root system or a stronger root system. That's the only reason you would use this method. And what they do is they'll grow rootstocks. So let's imagine this has roots down here, and you take the top off of this rootstock and cut it in such a way that you can slide it underneath that bark, pin it down, nail it right there, leave the roots on, and plant it next to the tree. So then this root system becomes a new part of this tree. Okay? What you're trying to do is on the side that you do this on, or if it's all the way around, you're trying to reestablish more roots.
It would be stood up though, right?
Oh, yep. So, yeah, this would be in the ground, okay, like that. Okay. So when you make your cuts, you want to make them so that, like, in our practice ones, you want to make this the same length as though this is in the ground.
Since that's a rootstock, will it technically try to put off shoots. You know?
If it has nodes right here, it might try to send out suckers. You just prune them back.
So you use the same type of rootstock as that
Yes.
tree, maybe not just the same genus, but maybe the same genus and species.
That's a good point. In this kind of grafting, you do usually want to use the same species of plant to get the root system to go. But you could use anything that's still union, the unions to that genus could still be used. Perhaps if you had a cold hardier rootstock or something, it doesn't matter because this still has roots.
Well, I was just saying like a normal genus would probably be cheaper as say someone has some kind of special Japanese maple or something going on the ring, you try to make it stronger, you just use a basic Japanese maple
Yes.
rootstock? Okay.
Yeah. This last graft is unique in that it's kind of a classification all its own. It's not a apical graft, it's not a bark graft. It's called the approach graft. And they do this with tomatoes and some edible varieties of plants to even in a hydroponics system, you can plant several tomatoes in a row in these pots, and then as they grow up, you can approach them to each other and graft them together, and they'll just share of one giant root system as you approach them together. And sometimes, though, if you wanted a different variety on top of a better rootstock, you can cut away the rootstock of the less hardy variety, and then the opposite scion portion of the fruit you don't want on it, you can cut away those stems, and then you've successfully crossed a hardy rootstock with the desirable fruit. And you don't have to do that, though. We were talking about it the other day. You can have, we're going to try this out maybe with our tomatoes, see if you can have two different varieties on one rootstock and see if it would be supported in the same way. But they do it, I've seen it with tomatoes in hydroponics where they've grafted them together so that they're stronger and hold up together and grow up the same trellis together. But they didn't cut off either of the rootstocks. They just let them grow together and keep their roots. So technically they're not a scion and a rootstock, right? They're both rootstocks, and we're growing them together, grafting them, and then you can choose whether you want to keep both rootstocks or cut one off or whatever once they've unioned. Okay, so there's three ways that we can union those together. One is the splice. This is a tiny stem, but I can still kind of demonstrate, I guess. The splice graft is simply a groove cut out of both rootstocks, technically, and then you push them together, tie them off. So this one has a rootstock, and another one would have a rootstock coming into it. You pinch them together, tie it off, and let them grow together like that. So that's just the splice. So you remember that we've done a splice graft before, right? But that was apical. That was one on top of the other, a scion and a rootstock. This one's two rootstocks that you're just pushing together. So it's still called a splice, though, that one type of it. There's three of them. So there's splice, and then you can add a groove in it, which would then be called the what? Tongue. Hey, yeah. We've done tongue before too. So now you have a little lip, and then on the other side I would cut upward, the opposite direction, slide them together, and then you have more opportunity for cambial contact. And then the third method of an approach is, let's say I had a larger stem of a rootstock and a smaller one that I grow here next to it, and I want to approach them together and get the smaller one to grow into the bigger one. That's an inlay. Okay, so all I would do is take the size of my smallest one and cut that notch into the larger stem. It's teeny tiny. And you only cut the notch as wide as the groove that you've cut on your first piece. So all that exposed cambium there just gets pushed in to this one. And let's say those roots are in the ground, and then this one you just press the cambiums together and tie that off like that. So that's an inlay approach. So go ahead and try these out for the rest of the hour, and then we will, any one that you need extra practice on, you can do that in the next lab and finish up that list that we've gone over. And then we'll go over budding, okay?
Did you say 3 to each wound, or would it depend on the size of the wound?
Depends on the size.
So
You
this
can
probably could call for more.
You could do 4 or 5 or whatever. That one's probably just another 3. It just depends on the scion you put on it as well.
Sure. And the first one is pretty thin. So
Yeah, if you're using small ones like that, you could maybe get 4 in there, but it just depends on your stock.
Can you cross these like this if you can get a better union between the two that way?
Cross them
Just like,
rather than coming straight on.
Because with the
straight,
notch.
straight on is going to be a better
Okay.
union point.
Okay. So the curving and stuff, it's just the
Let me see your
knots is
cuts
what-
though. So what's going on is you have a node right there that's in the way.
So
So
go ahead.
get rid of that node and you'll be able to push them
Okay,
together.
I didn't know if you do that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.